Let's take a look at Hyperreal by Comakid. What's going on, everyone? My name's Matt, aka Martiln. I'm an electronic music producer, educator, and Ableton certified trainer from Melbourne, Australia. And today, I'm going to be giving you my overview of one of the most recent Ableton packs, Hyperreal by Comakid. If you enjoy the video, please leave a like and a comment down below and subscribe if you're new. And if you really enjoy the video and my content, feel free to head on over to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can support me by buying me a coffee. And if you sign up to become a member, you'll also get access to things like the track that I made in today's video as a free exclusive download. So there's that going for that as well. For those of you who are new here, this is part of a series where I go through and review a bunch of the Ableton packs over on the Ableton website. This is the second one in the series, and we're planning on doing plenty more, so make sure you stick around for those. Okay, so what is Hyperreal? Let's take a look at the pack, what it contains, and then we'll go through how I made a track using the pack so it can give you some ideas of what the pack can do, as well as how you can use it for yourself and whether or not it's worth you investing in the product. Okay, so here I have the Hyperreal page open on the Ableton website, and we can see here that it says Hyperreal by Comakid is a collection of flexible instruments, drum racks, and effects inspired by the maximalist sound design of hyperpop and the dense hybrid fabric of contemporary reality. Play shape-shifting synths, craft elastic textures, or warp these sounds into something entirely new. And I can tell you from experience that that is a pretty apt description of this pack. I think it's an awesome pack, but we'll get to that later on. It costs 89 Australian dollars. It contains 101 presets, 4 live sets, and 100 live clips, plus plenty more samples. It's only 750 megabytes, so it's pretty small in comparison to some things, less than a gigabyte. Download size less than that, and it only requires Live 11 intro, which is fantastic because the presets that come with this are awesome. There's some demos and stuff. You can download a free demo. There's a demo of the track there, of the pack there on YouTube. There's a bunch of little demos, which you also get access to these demo tracks in Ableton Live format if you download the pack, which is pretty cool. So you can see how these were put together using the pack. And then it goes through to show you a little bit about what you can do with the pack, how it was created, which is pretty cool here. It comes with a large collection of drums, leads, basses, pads, plucks, and voice-based sounds to work with, as well as a whole bunch of really cool textures and samples and stuff like that. As it says here, it also features a set of material, texture, and voice racks. That's in the effect rack section, and there's a whole bunch of other experimental sounds going on here too. And as we can see here in the pack contents, we have 261 shots, 600 plus instrument samples, textures, and loops, 18 drum racks, 68 instrument racks, 18 audio effect racks, 100 MIDI clips, and 4 demo sets. So there's plenty to work with in this pack. Okay, so let's open up this pack inside of Ableton Live, and I'm going to go through just some of the presets, some of the samples, and then we'll show you how I used them all to create a track after that. Okay, so fair warning, there are a lot of sounds and stuff in this pack, so it would be kind of inefficient and ineffective for me to go through every single one, but what I thought I'd do is just give you a little bit of an overview of how the pack shows up inside of Ableton Live, so you can get a bit of a sense of how it works, how it's organized, and then how you might be able to use it in your own productions. So we can see here we've got Hyperreal by Comakid in our browser, and we've got a few different kind of parent folder categories here. We've got audio effect racks, demo sets, drum racks, instruments, MIDI clips, and samples. The audio effects racks here contains 2 different categories. We've got effects racks and vocal effects racks. You'll see I used a few of them in the session that I'm about to go through. Here are the demo sets that go through, or that are the tracks that are used to demonstrate the goings on of the pack. Those are what you can find on the SoundCloud on Ableton's website. There's a whole bunch of drum racks here, which are all really fantastic. You also, of course, get access to all of the drum hits as individual one-shots. Just to go through some of these, let's have a listen to some of them. So you can hear there's some pretty cool sounds going on in there in the drum racks. We've got a bunch of instrument racks here. We've got basses, effects, material racks, pads, percussive sounds, plucks, synth leads, texture racks, and voices. Again, I'm not going to go through all these, but we'll just showcase some of the basses and maybe some of the other stuff as well. Some really cool like industrial basses and stuff in there. Some really wild effects sounds and some cool material racks here as well. Kind of like, you know, all in a drum rack sampler format. Some pad sounds, which are really lovely. All these kind of really crazy experimental sounds. Bunch of percussive racks as well. Plucked sounds are really cool in this one. Some cool arps and stuff. Bunch of cool leads. Again, all really textural and kind of plucky, as well as some texture racks in here. And some voices.
Hi.
Or at least for most of them, they were voices at some point in their lives. There's a bunch of MIDI clips here as well, so if you want some inspiration, these all, you know, Ableton Live clip format files, so they come with things like the instrument information and stuff already preloaded up, as well as MIDI information, so you get some kind of inspiration to start your next project. And then we have all of the samples as well, which of course has all of the individual drum hits in here, a bunch of 808s. Which are all really fantastic. Bunch of really cool bell samples, clap samples, and everyone's favorite kicks and snares as well. Some really fantastic percussion in here. And then of course some snares. Probably one of my favorite sections is this experimental one-shot section, which contains bass shots, material shots, and some other crazy stuff in here. If we just listen to some of these bass shots, for instance. These material shots are really cool as well. And I really like these vocal shots too. They're really cool.
Absolute iconism. Hyperreal.
And some human vocal shots as well.
Hey.
And then of course we've got some other sequences. Mostly kind of percussive, experimental stuff, some material hits, so a bunch of like metal and glass sounds. Some paper. And some water sounds in here as well. And these pops are really cool too. Bunch of other textures. And then some synth one-shots as well, which you can see there's a whole bunch here. A lot of these were used to create the instruments, but you can obviously just go in and grab them yourself and pull them and use them into your project, which is something that I've done here as well. But as you can see, there are a whole lot of really, really, really cool sounds in here. Now, it's really worth noting as well that all of the instruments and drum racks do come with a bunch of preset macros and macro variations, which are really, really fantastic. And you'll see some of them in the track that I've created with this pack. But I guess without any further ado, let's play the track that I've made using this pack, and then I'll go through how I use the pack in the creation of this track. So I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so there you just heard the track that I created using Hyperreal by Comakid. Every single sound in there was created using this pack, or was a sample from this pack, and I think it turned out really cool. So what I want to do is go through and show you how I used the pack in the creation of this track. We'll just go from the top down, start with the drums, go through the synths, then the bass, and then everything else. And then I'll give you my final thoughts on the pack. Okay, so let's start with the drums. You can just ignore everything up the top here. That's all just sidechain triggers and stuff like that. But let's start with the drums. So the main drum pattern in the verse, I used the Info Revolution kit. Now, as I said, each of the different racks and instrument racks and drum racks and stuff come with a whole bunch of macros, either 8 or 16 in most cases, and a whole heap of macro variations as well. And you can also see that all these macros are really, really well laid out. We've got things like reduce, echo erode, fuzz amount, fuzz bias. And other than changing some of these macros and automating things like the kick tune and the snare tune amounts, I haven't actually really done anything else to any of these samples, except I think I've turned off stuff like the velocity to volume, and I've added some saturation and EQ and stuff onto the main kick drum here as well, just to give it a little bit more grit and make it punch through a little bit more. And then I've added some saturation onto the entirety of the kit, as well as some multiband dynamics, really just using it as an EQ there to boost the low end. And altogether, this sounds like this. And as you can see, I've done some automation here as well on this main drum track here, just with the snare tune, and then also some automation throughout this kind of drop area. Got a reverse kick here, which is simply the kick from that initial drum track that I've just dragged in as a sample and then reversed it, which has worked really, really well. And then we've got the drums for the drop, which I've created my own rack here by using a bunch of samples from the drum one-shots in the samples folder inside of the Hyperreal pack. And this is what the drum kit here by itself sounds like. Just the kick and the snare. I've got some other kicks in here because I was trying some other stuff out. And then I've got another kit here, which is the Reborn Dolls kit, which I'm only using the hat from. But again, you can see that we've got a whole bunch of macros here, a whole bunch of macro variations, and there's a whole bunch of extra processing going on here. All I've done here is add an EQ just because I'm only using a hi-hat. I don't need all that kind of low end here. So these drums together in the drop sound like this. And as you can see, I've also got the original drums coming through there as well, using that as some fills. And then what I've done here as well in the second half of the drop is taken some of the textural samples. So if I right click this and show this in the browser, we can see this is in the textural shots in the Hyperreal pack under the samples here. This is the metal spring sound. And I've actually just gone in and quantized and warped this sample here. And I've done that with another sample here too, which is from that same area. We can see here, I've got some warp markers. And these two sounds together just add a little bit of extra percussive material into this second drop. And if I play all of the drums together during this part of the drop, you can kind of hear how it's just adding some extra movement to either side. And I don't have any processing on these whatsoever. I've got some extra kind of textural one-shot sounds in here, like this metal pan sound. And then throughout the verse, I've also got a whole bunch of other sounds in here too. All of these are just one-shots from things like this material shots section, this textural shots section, all these material hits sections inside of the pack as well, which just open up so many opportunities for some really creative stuff here. The last major thing that I've got here in this drums section is this pop perk thing, which I grabbed a bunch of the pops from the materials hits pop section here, dragged them all into a drum rack, and then just created a really kind of random rhythm on eighth notes to create this, again, extra kind of textural thing going on. which in the verse just adds a little bit of extra kind of poppiness to the drums, which I think is really, really cool. Okay, so moving on from the drums, we have the synths. So in the synths group here, I've got some EQ just on the main track here using FabFilter Pro Q, and then I've got some kind of Duck Buddy here, which I'm just using as my sidechain trigger. Shout out to Slink and the crew who created Duck Buddy. I've been using it in all my projects. It's fantastic. So inside of the synth group here, I've got this ARP sound, which I've frozen because it was really processing intensive, but you can see again that it's got a whole bunch of extra macros, macro variations here as well. And it's a really in-depth instrument rack using Wavetable. And really all I've done here to change this is added a delay in before these reverbs and added in some post-processing using channel EQ, EQ8, and some compression as well as an auto filter, which sounds like this. And you can hear there's a lot of movement going on there already, which I think is really awesome. I've then got this verse pad here. I've added some stuff and movement to the macros here, particularly the volume macro, to kind of add a bit of a pulsating rhythm to this, which I recorded in using my Ableton Push 2. And then I've also automated some of the other parameters here, but I haven't gone in and changed the instrument at all because again, it's just such a really good instrument. I've added some post-processing in the form of reverb, and then again, I've just got some compression and some really basic EQ, and this verse pad sounds like this. Then I've just got some extra kind of ambient sounding background sounds here. I've got this ping vocal pad, which sounds really cool as like a riser. Eternal return sound here, which I'm using as a bit of an impact kind of sound. I've got this cool little Vox riser thing here, which is just playing a chord, but there's also this Max for Live shaper device here inside of the patch already, which is mapped to the chain volume, which I think is really cool. And it just kind of allows you to control the pulse rate of this sound, which I've used as kind of like a riser going into the next section. And I've got some other random synth sounds here, like a synth impact and some water texture. Just adding some extra background noise in the verses. Probably the biggest thing I've done is this synth here, which I've used in the second part of the drop, which is this sound. Really crazy and weird and industrial. And you can see here I've used the new order effect or instrument rack followed by the hyperscape effect. And something that's really cool, which I like about a lot of these, is if we take a look over in the left hand side on the info view panel, if I hover over some of these macros, which is really cool, you can see there's all these little Easter eggs, which I think is really, really fun. And that's basically it for the synths. So let's move on to the bass, which is not too crazy. We've got some 808 here, which is this Hyper 808. We've got this Virgin bass here, which I've done a lot of automation of the macro controls and added some extra saturation to. And then probably the coolest thing that I've done is use all of these bass one-shots here to create, you know, kind of the main bassiness of the drop. And all of these are really just some of the one-shots that I've grabbed from the experimental one-shot section, bass shots section here of the pack, and just thrown them together and added some extra post-processing, like grabbed some of the effect racks that have included in the pack, added some saturation, some OTT, some compression, some EQ, and just pulled them all together to create some really kind of crazy cool patterns. The kind of final part that I want to talk about is the Vox here, which I've used two vocal samples. One is the Hyperreal sample, which I'll be honest, took me a little bit of time to kind of get to sit in the rhythm that I wanted it to, but I did in the end get there. You can see I've kind of spliced this a little bit, and there is some warping going on inside of the clips as well. And I've also added a spectral resonator onto here.
Hyperreal.
I kind of use that as like a pre-drop vocal, if you will. And then I've also got a random little vocal ad-lib here, which is just basically someone saying, hey. And then I've got one last little sound here, which is just a water texture, similar kind of water texture to what I used in the verses, but this is just in the drops. And that is how I used the Hyperreal pack to create this cool track. So what are my thoughts on this pack? First off, what do I like about the pack? Well, I think that the pack is incredibly well designed, and all of the instrument racks and drum racks are really, really well designed with really fantastic macros, really fantastic variations, great use of effects. They allow for huge amounts of creative possibilities, as well as just a vast amount of versatility and really interesting sounds all throughout the entirety of this pack. As I mentioned, there's some really cool Easter eggs in the macro descriptions as well. I think that's a whole lot of fun. And I love all of the experimental one-shot samples and texture samples included in this pack as well. I think they add a whole lot of interesting flair to the sound, and I think it's really, really, really cool. What I also like is that the sounds really lend themselves to further experimentation. I didn't really experiment hugely on sounds here because I wanted to focus on what the sounds could do just in and of themselves, but obviously you could see here with all of the different samples and instrument racks and stuff included, there's a huge amount of room for your own experimentation when it comes to adding some further effects and sound design and stuff like that, which I think is really cool that the pack kind of invites that. What do I think could be improved? Honestly, I think there's very little that could be improved about this pack. I think it's awesome. However, some of the sounds are very processed. You might find yourself wanting to go in and kind of turn off some of the effects, which of course, if you have live intro, you can't do that. But that said, that's part of the aesthetic of this pack, and it works really, really well. The effects racks are also a little bit hit and miss. I think they're really cool, but they only kind of work on certain sounds, certain times, and I didn't kind of get as much use out of them as I wanted to. So all that said, would I recommend this pack, and is it worth it? Honestly, I absolutely love this pack. It leans towards quite experimental and modern sounding kind of music, industrial sounds, somewhere along the lines of like Flume, and I really, really like that. It's right up my alley. All the sounds are incredibly well crafted and incredibly usable right out of the box. Is it worth $89? It is a lot of money, but you get a whole lot of bang for your buck here, and really you could make hundreds and hundreds of tracks using just this pack alone, and you wouldn't get bored. It would sound really polished and really fresh, and I think that it would be money well spent. Okay, so there you have it. There is my review and overview of the Ableton Pack Hyperreal by Comakid. Now, you may or may not know that I've been live streaming the creation of these tracks for this Ableton Pack review series, and I thought it'd be a cool idea to tag onto the end of the video, just splice together some of the recording from those live streams. So I'm going to include at the end of this video just some hand-picked moments from the live stream for you to enjoy and see some further insight into how I used this pack to create this track. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like and a comment down below if you did, subscribe if you're new, and if you really enjoyed the video, feel free to head on over to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can buy me a coffee, support me by becoming a member, and you get access to things like the track that I included in this video that I made with this pack. Other than that, hope you're having a fantastic day, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Now let's just start with one of the drum racks, and if I need to get one of the individual samples, I can. What? Ooh, ooh. Oh man, that did not go very well, did it? Oh, that's kind of cool, actually. I like that that's a cool beat. I like that. That's a vibe. Let's do that and let's quantize you because that's how we work. I'm liking this. Let's see if I can get kind of just something to start with as a bit of an arrangement thinger. It's kind of cool. All right, so now if I like automate the dry wet of the delay, This is cool. I like this. What have we got under voices? I love this pack. Something that I'm missing is like an ambience thing. Yeah, there we go. That's nice. I still want some kind of paddy. What's the one I use? I use the occult. Let's try out this displacement pad as just like a hit, just like a shot here. Oh, that's cool. No, I forgot what I was going to do now. Crap. Whoops. Oh dear. Ooh. Well, I'm grabbing this. Because this is lovely. And I like it a lot. And I want to use it. I mean, that's not what I intended, but that sounds pretty awesome anyway. Cool. I guess we start working on like a drop, and there are some wicked sounds in here to do some cool drop stuff. We've got like experimental one-shots, bass shots. Yeah, okay.
Hyper-real.
Let's just play around with these bass one-shots. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Some texture. Almost had a gnat fly into my face. I think I got it. Ha. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Was it this one? Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I think I need to stretch it more. I think I need to stretch this second half of it. There we go.
Hyper-real.
Sick. I'm stoked on that as a start with this cool pack.